Hey guys, this is Thomas over here at NurseMoneyTalk.com, and in this video what I want to do is I want to talk about the 10 best jobs for nurses with bad backs or back pain, or honestly even if your back does not hurt and you don't have any back problems, but jobs where you just want to preserve your back. Before I get into that though, if you haven't already subscribed, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button. On this channel I talk about all things related to nursing school and nurse life. And lastly, I want to give a quick plug in for the job board over there at NurseMoneyTalk.com/jobs. So definitely check out the job board if any of these jobs are of interest to you. Let's go ahead and get started. So number one is public health nurse. And as a public health nurse, your goal is really about prevention of disease and illness and promotion of health. Instead of the individual, your job now is to look at communities or groups as a whole. You probably will be maybe involved in some kind of either policy making of sorts. So this tends to be more of a government or municipality type job. Because of this, you're probably looking at a lot of sitting, light walking. It's not direct patient care, which means you don't have to be moving and turning patients at all in this position. And while I'm on that, one of the things that you'll notice about these jobs is that I've tried to look at jobs where ideally you're not really turning patients, and which means that they tend to be not really patient or direct patient care positions, but also ones where you get some optionality in terms of sitting and standing. So ideally you're not at a job where you're always constantly standing, but at the same time you kind of have to be careful because some of these jobs that you are going to be on, potentially sitting down a lot, and bad posture really can be a problem. So it's almost kind of like there's no perfect way. There's no perfect job, if you will, for something like this, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. So next job is school nursing. And the beauty of this job is, besides it being Monday through Friday, generally with holidays and summers off, is that you're taking care of kids. So essentially you're going to be a school nurse, probably working for elementary, middle school, high school, something like that. You're going to be dealing a lot of probably med management, health promotions, teachings, and because it's kids, you're going to be dealing with a patient population that's generally healthier. Definitely going to be easier on your back. Number three is occupational health, and as an occupational health nurse, you're probably going to be working for an organization, not organization really, but more probably like a corporation, a factory of sorts. So if somebody gets hurt, you might be the one that they see and talk to before deciding on what you're going to do, about whatever that complaint is. Next one is telephone triage nurse. As the name says, you're going to be working for probably like a facility, a hospital, and you're going to be triaging patients over the phone. Number five is a nurse case manager. For this particular position, long story short, you're going to be essentially connecting patients with other outside resources. So if a patient is discharging, for instance, you might be the one charged with making sure that you connect that patient to what physician they're going to follow up with, and make sure the appointment sets and all that other good stuff. For instance, just to give you kind of like an example, when I was working in mental health and we had a patient that was discharging, it was the case manager's job to connect, to find out where they were going, make sure, so where did they live, make sure they had transportations and a means to get from the facility back to their home. And then based on where they live, they would be looking at, so they needed to follow up with a psychiatrist and a therapist, I believe. So they need to follow up with both. So the case manager would then schedule them, make sure that they had an appointment with a psychiatrist and a therapist, make sure that there was a pharmacy that they had access to, that they could then get their medications. And so just kind of give you an idea of how the case manager then kind of comes in at the back end to make sure that a discharged patient is going to be taken care of like long after they leave the facility. And because of the nature of this job, you're sitting down more times than not. You're on the phone, on the computer, X, Y, and Z, but you also get an option to then get up, go talk to the patient. So to me, it's a nice little balance, if you will. And of course, there's no lifting, turning patients. Next one is a utilization review nurse. And as a utilization review nurse, your job is to just make sure that the patient records justify the healthcare treatments and expenditure that they're getting. So we had one I know insurance companies will have something similar to that. So they'll look at patient records, look at what all are the expenses, see if it justifies it, and if they're going to pay for it or not. But I know facilities will kind of have something like that as well, where they'll be dealing directly with insurance as well. Now, I will say sometimes I've seen facilities kind of almost throw a utilization review and a case management position kind of together. But either way, regardless, it's a nice position to where, of course, similar to case management, you'll be on your body, you'll be sitting down a fair bit, and then you'll occasionally be able to get up, move around and whatnot. Number 7 is a medical sales rep. Now with this one, as the name says, you'll be selling, could be medications, it could be equipment, it could be whatever. So you're essentially in sales. I guess the one thing to throw around this job is that it does tend to be a lot of traveling. Probably will be either driving the car a lot, which for some people say that's not really, that can be bad for that can be very uncomfortable for their back. So there is that, or you would be flying a fair bit. So definitely something to keep in mind. Next one is a nurse educator. Now, of course, this is the job where you are a faculty member. You can also get a nurse educator position working for like a hospital or a facility where you're over nursing education, like as a broad. So you can also do that. And I think that would probably kind of fit. That would kind of all fit together anyway. But, you would get to train the next generation of nurses, assuming, looking specifically at the faculty side of things. I will mention this though, is that the one downside to this, if you go to the faculty side of things, is that they are looking for, it used to be masters. A lot of these schools are now pushing for PhDs or doctorate of nursing practice. So that is probably something to keep in mind of if you only have a bachelor's, or if you only have an associate's, that could end up being a hindrance at some point or another. Next one is nursing informatics. So in this job, you are essentially going to, the easiest way I can think about it is like, so instance, if you look at the tech that we use in healthcare, so if you look at the electronic medical records, and then so you look at who are the ones that are making it, the coders, the developers or whatnot, and then you look at the people who are actually using it, which would be the nurses, the physicians and whatnot. And so what you end up being is you kind of pretty much end up being like bridging the gap between those who develop the systems and those who actually use it. And so you're kind of there to ideally be able to make sure that what's being developed actually makes sense, not just from a paper standpoint, like it looks good on paper, but from a practical sense, it actually makes sense as well. So the last one I'm going to mention, and actually before I get to that one real quick, I do want to mention that there is an article out on this already on NurseMoneyTalk.com. I'll put a link to it in the descriptions below. And in the article, I do have like the expected salary and a whole host of other information that you might be interested in. So definitely check that out on NurseMoneyTalk.com. But the last one is going to be nurse writer. And in this one, it is, as the name says, you're going to be doing freelance writing jobs. And so because of your licensure as a nurse and your experience, you're going to be qualified to be able to write and speak on a lot of things that a lot of people are not going to be able to speak on just because of lack of credentials and lack of experience. And because of that, you can typically charge a premium for this. So unless you actually get a more or less a consistent full-time gig for a bigger company, trying to go the kind of like the gig route, whatnot, you can do well, but it does take a while to really build up a book of clients, and so that can be, you know, kind of a grind. But I do think this is the one job though, when compared to all the other jobs that I listed, that does give you the most amount of, if you want to say, freedom or flexibility in terms of when you can work, and you know, and what you can do. So generally you'll get a writing assignment with a deadline, and it's your job to just get it done by the deadline. So whether, you know, if your deadline is in 4 days from now, if you get it done in a day, then good for you. If it takes you 3 days, as long as you make it, you know, get it done before the deadline. And then of course you then determine, are you going to work on it in the morning, in the afternoon, the evening, late at night, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning? That will be solely up to you, as long as you get the job done within the deadline. So there is a lot of flexibility when it comes to this job. So which one do you find the most interesting that you might consider doing? Is there a nursing job that you think that would fit really well with this that I missed? Let me know in the comment sections below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you very soon in that next one.